My name is Lisa Carlin, for those of you who haven't met me, co-founder and director of Future Builders. I'm a scale-up mentor and board advisor in B2B SaaS. I guide CEOs, teams, and directors to accelerate their transformation to a unicorn organization. Those working with me have a sounding board and expert guidance to scale up with speed and precision so they can grow business value faster. So here's a bit about why I do what I do. I grew up in the ugly apartheid era in South Africa. I felt then and still feel embarrassed to be a white person. So many advantages when others were sidelined. This drives me to want to make a difference to workplaces and education, giving people a voice. Workplace software is particularly fascinating to me as it can make huge improvements to people's lives and productivity at work. So quick background, early background was with Accenture in South Africa and McKinsey in the US. I've run my consulting business for 20 years now. And 10 years ago, a group of us co-founded Future Builders, a network of organizational development specialists. I've delivered growth and transformation outcomes for over 50 organizations. And besides my client work, I'm on the advisory board of Rebellious with a Z. It's a startup, the TikTok for jobs. And I chair an education non-for-profit. I take a human-centered approach to everything. So thinking about customers, employees, business partners, investors, and the community. So what I'd like to invite you to do is to introduce yourself and your business in the chat. So I've purposefully set this up as a meeting rather than a webinar so that we can have some interaction. And we've got a great group of people on the line. So I recognize some of the founders on the line, CEOs, some of my colleagues from Future Builders. I welcome you today. Pop into the chat, maybe just 1 or 2 sentences, please, a little bit about you and your business. And thank you to my colleague, Helene Fogarty, a consultant who's helping me today. Today, I want to share with you the 7 steps to a unicorn business model. So most of you are in tech startups and scale-ups. So you can gather together a group of people that have all the right expertise. You can build a stellar product. You can keep working as hard as you possibly can. And you can still fail if you don't have the 7 steps in place that I'm going to show you. I will ask you to contribute your ideas today. Please use the chat and the polls. I'd love you to turn your cameras on and phones off, and we'll have a discussion later in our seminar where you can share your views and turn your sound on if you choose to do that. And then there'll be some questions, time for questions at the end. So the fact is you can't get to the unicorn zone by pushing harder. As a scale-up specialist with more than 20 years experience in growth and transformation, I can tell you, you must create a pull effect. So just like bees individually have limited influence, but working together in a colony where every part of the system fits together effortlessly, those little bees punch well above their weight. So in your business, you're faced with many challenges. The big ones, making the right choices with limited funds, getting the right people, and unprecedented change in your operating environment. Let me show you the path to value creation. My model shows 5 different types of approaches to activate your strategy. The most ineffective approach is haphazard and ad hoc. So the board and executive are de-energized, teams are disinterested, and the business languishes in the 0 zone. An amateur effort is not much better. So these businesses are just stuck and low engagement and in the change failure zone. Methodical, the next one, is over-engineered and dysfunctional. So amongst your team, this eventually causes grudging compliance and you're in the inertia zone. Professional looks good, but the board, if you have one, and the executive or your founders are in the dark room. So disconnected from your team and from customers, developing plans before communicating. So they're in the inertia zone, so pushing hard against resistance. The unicorn approach is participative and people-centered. So the board and executive are of one voice that is deeply inspiring. Staff and customers are engaged, and instead of pushing hard, that engagement creates a pull effect. And it's this momentum that pulls you into that unicorn zone, the ROI and innovation zone. It's the pull effect that creates that flywheel to deliver hypergrowth in your business. So have a think to yourself now. I'm not going to ask you to share this, but have a think where you are in that model. And where would you prefer to be? So the unicorn model is within your hands. So to do this, you're wondering, how is it possible to create that pull effect rather than have to push so hard? The pull effect is all about people, and it starts with you. So let me talk about that a little bit more. The darkroom strategy that I mentioned triggers adverse neurological reactions in our brain. The concept of the dark room is based on research and an article by Dr. Norman Chorn, and hi Norman, he's on the line today, and myself. And the link Helene is going to put into the chat if you would like to read up more. Some of you are familiar with David Rock's scarf model, and I want to talk about this very briefly as it's a theme throughout the 7 steps that I'm going to show you. So our brain can react positively or negatively to something. So we can move towards it or away from it, which is our fight and flight reaction. Now, I've worked with in behavioral change and transformation my whole career and looked at lots of different models. And this one is just really easy to use every day, because if you want to encourage people to move towards you, to create that pull effect, you need to increase these 5 factors, basically, right? So people crave status. They want to feel important and valuable. They want certainty. They want to be in the know. They want autonomy and control over their environment. They don't want to be in the dark. They want relate to others, relatedness and fairness. And this is relevant to all the people you work with, your team, your customers, business partners, and investors alike. So let me give you an example. I was working with the CEO of a SaaS business, and he wanted to restructure the organization for global growth. So I do a lot of org design work. And it was a very significant change to the organization and changed a lot of people's roles. And his plan, because of the complexity of it all, was to announce it in a all hands meeting or town hall. So brief some people before, some of the leaders before, and then announce it. Can you imagine what my advice to him would have been and what the difficulty with that is in terms of the scarf model? Maybe you can type that into the chat. I'm going to ask you to type into the chat, which reactions of those 5 does it undermine? So we've got there a C. Certainty, absolutely, definitely certainty. So yeah, people will feel very uncertain to have things foisted upon them. F, definitely fairness. Particularly if people feel that some of it is more unfair to them than to others, and they will also feel unfair that they haven't been included. R, relatedness, absolutely, Darby. And A, basically, that's exactly right, Aaron. So all of them, full house, exactly. So what we did instead was I worked with him to develop a whole lot of workshops. So we ran these workshops, and we're very clear on what parts of the structure were negotiable and what wasn't negotiable. I always say that to my clients, because if you communicate what is non-negotiable, that gives people some certainty. And then there's always something that you can find that is negotiable. And it's those things that people then feel they can have a voice, and that increases their status, their relatedness and fairness. So we got some great ideas as a result of the workshops, particularly around cross-functional groups. We got fantastic momentum, and that business is just flying in terms of their revenue growth. So if you involve people, you will create that pull effect. You can then attract the right people into your business. You can inspire those people to give their best, and you can smash your goals. So I'm going to now take you through the 7 steps to the unicorn business model. For each step, there's a live poll with a yes or a no question. So don't worry, it's not a test, it's anonymous, and it gives you a chance to think deeply about your own business. If you're a one-person practitioner, as I know some of you are, or founders with very few people in the team, you can think of your team as the rest of the people that you work with. So some of you are working with contracted developers or other subcontractors. So you definitely are still going to be working in a team or even with your clients. So we're going to answer a number of yes or no questions, and I'm going to ask you to count the number of yes answers that you have. Okay, and at the end of it, you're going to land up with a score out of 7. So the 7 steps, let's get underway. Step 1, each part of your business model is in fit with the other parts. So there are 5 parts of the business model, and each part must be aligned. So purpose and strategy, organizational design, product market fit, your go-to-market and client or customer experience, and your people culture and the whole execution governance of how you get things done. Now, Canva is a great example because you'll all be familiar with this Aussie icon. You know they'll meet the definition of a unicorn business because they're a private company with a valuation over 1 billion. So 35 billion as of most recently. Now, to get to their unicorn status, they have a unicorn business model. So their purpose, if we start with strategy and purpose, is all about empowering the world to design for everyone. So notice those themes, empowerment and everyone, and you will see that throughout their business model. Their org design is 80 empowered startup teams. That's what they call those business units, startup teams. Their product market fit and go-to-market is all about empowering those of us who aren't design professionals. So in everything they do, like offering a free product to those in non-for-profits. So to make it available and accessible to everyone. And the employee value proposition and culture, I'm going to read you the part of their job ads. We design your Canva life experience to empower you to do the best work of your life. Powerful stuff, and echoing the same concepts as part of the business model, that concept of everyone and motivation and empowerment. So fit is critical to get right because of the high failure rate of startups. So it's about 90% of startups fail, according to Failori. From my work with so many different types of organizations, I can tell you customers will immediately notice if any one part of that business model doesn't fit together, as your brand will feel inauthentic. And this threatens your customer retention. Likewise with talent retention, do what you say you're going to do to keep good people. And likewise investors. So, yes or no? Does each part of your business model fit with the other parts? If you are not sure, it's a no. Okay. So we've got 52 people on the line. So let's have a look at the results, please. So 54% have said no, 46% have said yes. So 46% in fit. Okay, so if you answered a yes, your score is 1, and just keep counting the number of yes answers, and then you'll get the score out of 7 at the end. Okay, so it's not a competition. I can't even see what you're voting for, so be honest with yourself, and that way it'll be most useful. Okay, step 2. Your team co-develops each part of your business model. So you need to get out of the dark room. You want that pull effect. So, yes or no? Do you consistently co-develop or discuss each part with your team? Hey, the results are coming in. Really interesting. I'll close that and share that with you. So 70% of you have said yes to that. That's terrific to see. Step 3, all parts of your business model are documented. So you don't need to go overboard on documentation. Keep it really simple. The point is, if it's not documented, you cannot be 100% sure what you're implementing. If it's only sitting in people's heads, you can't be sure that your team are aligned and all pulling in the same direction. So I worked with a startup last year, a very smart team of 4 people with a great concept. They had almost finished the product development and run into a snag, as each of them had a different priority about the offer. And so it became clear that they actually weren't clear on their strategy, but they hadn't documented everything. So together we developed a strategy on a page, a simple strategy on a page with their value proposition. And then this raised a need for them to actually redesign their product. And I've said to many clients, and if you don't have a strategy, you don't have a business, you just have a product. If it's not documented, you're operating ad hoc and you're in the 0 zone. So, yes or no? Is every part of your business model documented? Now everybody's getting really quick at this. I can see the results coming in. Really interesting. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. And let's have a look at the results. How interesting. So 64% have said no to this. Okay, step 4. Your business model is current. So our environment is changing fast with new risks, opportunities, threats all the time, right? So let me give you an example, okay? Employee value proposition, EVP. What will attract people to work with your company? So since the pandemic, the number one thing people want, working from home, working from anywhere, hybrid work, flexibility. So it's a massive opportunity. Mental health and burnout is a big threat at the moment. And various surveys are saying that about 40% of people are considering changing their jobs over the next 12 months and leaving their business. So again, massive threat, but also an opportunity. Your go-to-market and product roadmap, same thing. I see in the sector that I expect there's going to be increasing consolidation amongst competitors for many of you. And so it's really important to follow what's going on. And I'll show you how I do that shortly. So for some elements, you're going to need an annual cycle or a quarterly cycle, like, annual strategy review. Some things only change when there's a particular trigger. And the only exception to all of this is your company purpose, and that is enduring. So, yes or no? Is your business model current and up to date? Numbers coming in fast. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And let's have a look at the results. Interesting. So 65% of folks saying their business model is up to date. Step 5, you use your business model every day. It must inform what you're doing. So if you have more than 12 people and you're growing at an ARR of over 100%, you're typically recruiting at least 3 people at one time. So you're spending all of this time recruiting in the most competitive talent market that we've had in decades. You cannot sell your company to candidates without a consistent, compelling EVP, employee value proposition. And you need a one-page EVP every time you interview someone. Long, wordy documents are useless. You need a concise one-page strategies that you can use every day. Plans provide rigor. Plans prevent rework. If you don't use plans, you're ad hoc. and ad hoc is in the 0 zone. If you can't use your plans, simplify. I love one-page plans. Did I say that already? I love one-page plans. One-page plans are easy to use. So here is a list of the items that I like as essential items for your everyday North Star, right? Strategy on a page, including your purpose and your value proposition. I don't use the terms mission, vision, and I polled a number of my Future Builders colleagues on the line today. I polled them, we had a discussion about this recently, and we concluded that mission and vision are old-fashioned terms. So we like the word purpose, and that goes on the strategy on a page and along with your goal, which is similar to vision. 3 to 5 metrics. So I know some of you in the SaaS world are using, there are many metrics around funnel, go to market. Choose the top 3, 5 if you have to, and keep those in front of you. Look at them every day. Your EVP on a page, and also an industry map. And let me show you what I mean by an industry map. So this is an example of one for the people and productivity SaaS market. It's how the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and they're sorted by particular dimensions, right, on each axis. This will give you a picture in your mind. Why does it need to be in front of you every day? Let's see in chat what you guys think. Why do you need this in front of you every day? To keep everyone on the same page, absolutely. Focus on what's important. You can work out where to add the most value, help you focus for context of your offering. Okay, great ideas. The main thing I like is to be able to keep an eye on what's happening in the industry. So particularly this industry that is so fast moving, or every day you're seeing new companies being invested in, new businesses being bought out. If you know who your competitors are and how they fit into your model and what the adjacent competitors are, it makes a big difference if you know how that all fits, and then you know exactly who to keep an eye on. So let's have a look at the poll for that one. Yes or no? Do you use your business model in practice every day? Right. How interesting. Let's have a look at those results. They're almost evenly split, with 51% of people saying yes. Okay, step 6, you get independent input from an expert. So it sounds obvious, and but I find founders have deep technical knowledge and domain expertise and are usually very smart. So typically they have excellent engineered products that can do amazing things. But whatever your superpowers are, running things past an expert adds another whole dimension. And it could be a commercial perspective, it could be a people perspective, governance. So who is the first and best expert to test your ideas with? I'm going to have a look at the poll and see if anybody is answering that. Your customers, fantastic. End users, absolutely. That's exactly right. And so, thinking about what market research have you done recently? Okay, maybe type into the chat for me. I'd love it if you typed into the chat anyone else that you, any types of experts. So while you're doing that, I would wonder if you are talking to directors out there, or investors or potential investors. Who else in your network? Peer network, I see. Absolutely, Lisa. Vicky, investment. Yeah, that's great. Utsav, advisory board members. So all the different types of people and out there that you can go to for help. You listen to those people, ask them for help, listen to them, and they will give you gold. And if you don't, just network some more, set up your own advisory board, start up a community. I love communities. I think they are an amazing accelerator. There are lots of other communities out there like the Sydney Startup Hub and Stone and Chalk, or you pay an expert for advice like somebody like myself or my colleagues. The market for SaaS is crowded and competitive. So do things like an amateur, and expect an amateur result. So yes or no, you have had independent input on each part of the business model from a suitable expert. Okay, the polls are still moving. There's some folks still voting. Okay, let's have a look at those results. Interesting. So 56% of people are saying no, 44 yes. So it's roughly evenly split almost. Interesting. Step 7, your purpose statement guides everything. So once you have your purpose statement, it will guide everything you do, including help you refine your strategy. Purpose aligns teams to pull in the same direction. Purpose strengthens culture. Purpose energizes your people. So a recent McKinsey research found that 70% of people say they define their purpose through work. So people will be drawn to your company if they identify with its purpose. Purpose inspires customers, and purpose makes the world want you to win. So I've popped the poll up there, and while it's up there, you can see if you look at businesses in your industry, when you co-develop your purpose with your team, that's a very powerful place to start. And the example up here is workplace technology, which I discussed recently with a client when we co-developed their purpose with their team. And that gave just some ideas about what could be possible. So let's see the poll answers. Yes or no? Do you have an inspiring purpose statement that guides everything you do? Terrific. This is great to see. So 58% of folks are saying that they have a purpose statement that guides everything they do, which is terrific. So by now you should have a score out of 7. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask you to enter a number between 1 and 7 to enter your score in this poll. And then we'll see where we sit as a group. Okay, let's have a look at those results. They're quite interesting. So I'm seeing there that the majority of folks, 42%, are answering 4 or 5. And the rest is split through around a normal distribution curve, really. Okay. So have a think now, improving which of these steps will have the biggest impact on your success. So what's the greatest improvement you can now make? Folks are still having a think about that. One workplace SaaS business that I started working with a year ago had a score of almost 2. And they had involved their team significantly. They were a very participative business and had documented most things. A year later, after working with them, they now have a score of 5, and they're growing at an ARR of 100%. So it's a really terrific business. Let's have a look at the poll results. Okay, so it's quite a spread actually. And unsurprisingly, the lowest at 3%, one person is wanting to involve their team more. So there's a lot of participation happening in this group. The biggest one that people are saying is to document their business model. So that's really interesting. So what I'm now going to do is send you into breakout groups just for 5 minutes, and you'll have the opportunity to meet a few others and share some ideas. So if you prefer not to participate, just leave your camera, turn your camera off, okay? Or turn your mute to keep yourself on mute. If you're happy to participate, please put your camera on and your sound on. Turn yourself off mute. Okay, so your topic is what step is most important and why? Fantastic. I see everybody coming back now. Excellent. So what I'd love to do is hear from one or two people, what was the most important step for you and why? So if you are happy to share, can I ask you to just put your hand up and I will call on one or two people. Darby, love to hear from you.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. Lisa, this has been a fantastic exercise in terms of crystallizing some relevant thinking. The element that I selected was about business model being kept up to date. And the reason I chose that wasn't because people aren't important. They are. They're critically important. But it's really allowed me to just call out that things are moving just so quickly that's essential for us as a team to be just constantly refreshing, revisiting, revising. And coincidentally, I shared with the Breakout team that I came back from a conference last night, and early this morning shared with my co-founder just the two significant things that we need to be focusing on given the shifts that we're seeing in the market and the competitive landscape. So it's a timely discussion, and I thank you for it.
Fantastic, Darby. Thanks. Lovely to hear from you. We'll go with Lisa and then Norman, and then we'll keep going.
Thanks, Lisa. We actually probably represented the bell curve in our group. We had 4 different responses. So independent input for one, fit for another, documentation and purpose. So I think, and each of our different sort of reasons as to why those factors were the most important. So we were probably a good group that represented the bell curve of responses from the earlier poll.
Great to hear. Thanks, Lisa. Norman.
Oh yeah, thanks. Look, our group was quite unanimous in that 3 of the group discussed purpose. The fact that we hadn't articulated it, that it hadn't been written down, that we hadn't got people to align around it. So that was almost unanimous. Clarity of purpose. And I suppose just relating to Darby's point, particularly seeing as the environment is changing, you know, to update that purpose, or not to update it, to reinterpret it and to make sure that everyone understands it.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting, really interesting. So let's wrap up with some next steps before we go to questions. So you can contact me on LinkedIn. Please subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. I'll ask Helene to put the links in the chat. You can also fill out the Unicorn Business Model Index to get your score in much more detail. And what it will also do is give you a full checklist of all of these items. So I encourage you to do that. And I have a special offer for folks at the Spark Festival called Inspire with Purpose. So this is just for the first 3 folks who contact me, because I can only take on limited clients, although we have an amazing community of folks in the Future Builders group as well that I can introduce you to. So it is usually a $5,000 package, but for the Spark Festival, it's $3,500. And that includes a one-on-one consultation with you, preparation and a mini staff survey, a 2-hour virtual design thinking team workshop to develop your purpose statement. And plus, for the Spark Festival, you'll get an extra session with me to develop your EVP on a page, your employee value proposition. And that's normally $3,000 alone. So if you're interested, please send an email straight away and say purpose now in the subject. And Helene will put my email address in the comments in the chat. So thank you. Let's turn off the slides. And what I'd love to do now, we have just a little over 10 minutes left with some questions. So if you have a question, just pop up your hand, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. Alison, go ahead.
So one of the things that I was looking at, and it's and you've got all of the steps, would it be correct to say that you should start with purpose because it guides everything, or is that something that, I don't know, I just felt like for me the purpose was like the guiding light and the foundation that then would direct everything else? Would you agree with that?
It's a really interesting question, Alison,
yeah.
And it is quite an iterative process, I find. Most of the businesses I come across have the strategy before the purpose statement.
Wow.
Then once they have the purpose statement, then they go back and it's sort of then the other pieces, the strategy and other things start being a bit more refined and sharper.
So they kind of work together and you sort of iterate back and forth.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of purpose-driven founders that have a purpose sitting implicitly behind their head. They're things that they're passionate about, but it's sort of known in the business, but it's not. It's often not explicit, but it's not hard to find. And once it's found and it's articulated in a way that's inspiring, the other parts of the business model then tend to fall into place. Great question. Any other questions? Any interesting ahas? I think Vicky wants to talk, so I'll call on Vicky next.
Just a quick question, because a couple of in our breakout room, a couple of us were talking about the need to keep the business model up to date. What suggestions do you have to support organisations around that?
That's a really good question, Vicky. I would put together a schedule, a frequency schedule of what needs to be updated when, and include some of that in your annual calendar. So you should have an annual for governance, for operating governance, and for your board, if you have one, you should have a calendar, right, of the rhythm. This is the rhythm and routine of the whole business and how it runs, how it ticks, how it rolls. And in there, if you've got some triggers like your annual strategy review, your quarterly priorities review, then that will be the glue. I call governance the glue because it's the glue that keeps you on track. So in the business, it's the execution governance or the project management that will just keep everything ticking along. And at the board level, it's the board governance. So that's what I would do.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Tony, lovely to see you.
Hi.
Tony and I did our MBAs together. I won't say how many years ago.
Yeah, so one is on top of the class, one is the bottom of the class.
Tony, we probably saw in the chat earlier, co-founded a brilliant business called Rasher and provides services to the airline industry.
Yep. Thank you, Lisa. So I've got a question, just perhaps seeking comment input from everyone as well. Obviously, today, if you go out and look for engineers, senior developers, and so on, quite often there's a flexibility and working from home remotely, everything is being ranked as #1. And if you don't give that flexibility, I'm not coming to you, not even bother with interviews and so on, right? And yet, as a company, I run, we actually get people back to office 4 days a week. Right, and we do believe that whiteboard sessions, the corridor chat, and then even just by the desk, quicker question, we get a lot of things resolved and so on. I just wonder, with customers, we talk about customer segmentations and so on. I'm just wondering, with the employees market today, whether as an employer still can do how we can do some employee segmentation or potential candidate segmentation, only choose the ones really saying, look, they wanted to do something, well, perhaps in life, and then not really valuing flexibility and work from home as the #1 priorities for them. So just like to hear everybody's comment, or Lisa, you have some thought on that.
Love to hear what folks think about that.
Lisa, from my perspective, can I?
Go ahead, please, Davi.
Tony, it's a brilliant question. Just for everyone's benefit, co-founded a B2B SaaS play, really focused on addressing climate change through natural resource management and agriculture. So we're an earth tech company. Tony, one of the things that we thought we would do is find and recruit a talent officer for the company. What we discovered was we just were fortunate. We came across somebody with absolute talent and thought that it was going to be a stretch for us, but we decided to make that stretch and appointed that person as head of people and operations. And it's made such a difference in terms of what we do, how we do it, how quickly we do it. So making that kind of investment, it's really made a difference in terms of the way that the co-founders think about culture, the way we think about people, and the way that the team essentially builds and interfaces with each other. So the only thing that I can suggest to you is, similarly, we have very real needs and interests by members of the team that are physical, practical, and non. But so having that kind of person on board to shape the way that things are done makes such a difference. It's not easy to put your finger on it, but you know it when you see it. That might be a really soft answer, Tony and Lisa, but that's the first thing that came to mind. Investing in people who manage people and lead people earlier than you otherwise would. It's a good investment, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great idea,
Awesome.
Garvey. I mean, it's a great it's really important. I find at around sort of 12 people is where in a business is often where people are starting to think of getting HR help. What I would do if you're really stuck on that for ideas is actually ask the people. Do a little mini survey, because it's so easy to do, and that's going to be your best way of actually finding some ideas.
Lisa, I just wanted to point out there was a question in the chat quite a while ago from Jeannie Marie.
Right. Yeah, go ahead and maybe you can summarize it for us.
She said, what do you mean by documentation of business model? It would be great to understand what you feel that ought to cover.
Okay. So good question. So I'd go back to the business model, the 5 parts of the business model. Each part is broken down into some other parts. And so, for example, within strategy and purpose, there's your strategy overall, there's your strategy on a page, there's your purpose statement, there's your priorities for the business. So each part's broken down. If you fill out the Unicorn Business Model Index, you will get a very granular list of, there's 17 different items that I recommend documenting. And yes, and you'll have quite a granular list there, and you'll get a score and much more detail than the 7 items. So you'll be able to see exactly which items, because I know it's harder that we couldn't go through so many items in today, in the time today. So we've probably got time.
Lisa,
for another. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody was.
Look, I was just going to say something.
Pete, hello.
Hello. I'm Pete. I was a developer and still a developer in IT. Tony, I was going to. You started off saying.
Pete, give a pitch for your business while you're on the line.
I'll give the pitch at the end.
Audience.
We're an SME lending business. We used to be Radio Rentals. I don't know if everybody knows who Radio Rentals was, a consumer finance business. And we did a lot of work in digitizing it, selling it. And now we're running the SME side. So we're just back into market. I'll pause that. Tony, you started talking about developers and IT people. There are 2 types of IT people I found in my career. The ones that think that programming is like playing golf or tennis, and the other ones who've realized that programming is a team sport. And sometimes, I've been with developers who just want to sit in the corner and play individual. They're not going to make it. And sometimes as leaders, we're going to work out, you can ask them to play as a team, but the more I'm asking that question, is programming a team sport or an individual sport, the more I'm recruiting better for kind of developers that, in my organization. I just wanted to add that.
Love that, Pete. Great question, great conversation to have with people. Any other comments on that? Any other questions?
I think Norman put up his hand.
Go ahead, Norman.
Oh, look, sorry, I won't take up too much time. I just wanted to make a comment relating to what Tony has said. Look, I think there are two things here. One of them is that the research is actually quite clear now. There's been massive studies done that show that work that requires collaboration, deep insight, and the discussion of complex issues really suffers online. It needs to be done face to face. And so what I wanted to say was, rather than segmenting employees, try to segment the work that needs to be done. And I think this notion of coming in 3 days or 4 days a week is very static and very structured, and overly so. And perhaps saying things like, we're going to do these things on a particular day and people need to come in for that thing. And so when you bring them in, get them to do something really specific that requires that collaboration. Rather than thinking about the people, think perhaps about the work. It's just certainly my perspective from what I've seen. So I hope that adds some value. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. I think with that one, with working from home and providing flexibility, my view is that there needs to be some parameters. So again, it's that what are the negotiables and what are the non-negotiables? And if everybody is really clear on that, then it's something they can live with and they've got a bit of flexibility, but there's also some parameters. So what I've seen work well is there's one business I know where they require everyone to be in on a Wednesday, and Wednesday becomes their glue day. And everybody knows that that's expected. And some people, while they may hate having to get on a train for an hour to go into the city, in the end, it will be beneficial to them and everybody else. And, you know, some of those team meetings and the team interactions that Norman's talking about can then happen on that day. I notice it's 1 o'clock and I would love to wrap up at a time that so you can all get to your next meetings. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet with you today, and thank you very much for coming along and for your contributions. It's been terrific. Thank you.